The global balance of power is rapidly altering. As early as 2017, America would struggle to successfully engage in a war over Taiwan, seeing approximate parity between China and the United States. The age of unchallenged American dominance is coming to a close. With its rapid re-emergence, China has experienced unprecedented economic growth. To help visualize this immense transformation, in 1980, China's GDP was less than $300 billion. By 2014, it was $11 trillion, making it the world's second largest economy. Although in 1980, China's economy was smaller than the Netherlands, China now witnesses incremental growth roughly equal to the entire Dutch economy. Over the coming years, if China attains just half the productivity as the United States, its economy will be double that of the US. If they manage to equal American productivity, China will have an economy 4 times that of the United States. This level of change is astonishing and unprecedented. To put this into perspective, between 2011 and 2013, China produced and used more cement than the US did in the entire 20th century, building the equivalent of Europe's entire housing stock in just 15 years. China already produces 4 times as many STEM graduates as America, with 1.3 million for the former and just 300,000 for the latter. As of 2019, China is home to 219 of the world's supercomputers, while the US houses a mere 116. The facts are, there is little that America can do to slow this emerging giant. Short of internal collapse, the Global Power Index predicts that China's power will be greater than the United States as soon as 2023. The GPI measures 4 key variables including nuclear capability, military capacity, trade as a factor for economic capacity, as well as the working age population as a measure of labour capacity. This figure is the closest representation we have of national power. Even considering a decade of 1% growth from 2020 until 2033 and a decade of growth of just 3% from 2031 until 2040, China would overtake the US in 2034. This places America in a precarious position. As China overtakes America in power, it will likely call for larger representation in international institutions, as well as enforcing its own version of the Monroe Doctrine, ensuring China's dominance over the Asian periphery. For many Americans, they've only ever known an international stage dominated by America. This unique position has offered widespread acceptance of American values across the world. Assuming the naturalness of this position is not only wrong, but dangerous. If history has taught us anything, it is that great power transitions rarely end peacefully, with 12 out of 15 great power transitions of the last 500 years ending in war. To make matters worse, America lacks expertise on the East Asian region, with just 54% of the top 40 international relations departments offering a single graduate level seminar on Asia. Rather than bracing for this emergent threat, America has willingly taken an insular turn. Chinese military strategist Yinan Jin would show excitement in response to this isolationist foreign policy, declaring, in fact, he has given a huge gift to China. As the US retreats globally, China shows up. China's infamous $1 trillion Belt and Road Initiative offers numerous deep-sea ports which could provide safe harbour to their navy, while also increasing China's military reach. America appears unprepared for this challenge, witnessing deep social fragmentation, including divisions on racial, cultural, geographic, and socio-economic lines. These divisions reduce a state's coherent response to external stimuli, while complicating budgetary commitments to the military and other responses to foreign affairs. The question is though, is a war between the United States and China inevitable? To be able to answer this question, we need to touch on some basic political theory. For many scholars, since there is no world police, a state cannot guarantee what another state will do. And so, states exist in a self-help world. All states are forced to build up their military capacity to ensure survival. The First World War, as well as the Cold War, are simple examples of this. A bitter disagreement can easily escalate to tragedy. The costs of assuming that a state is more benevolent than it actually is are high. And so states tend to be caught in the security dilemma. As each state inevitably secures itself from attack, other states observe this relative increase and then also begin increasing their capabilities. This phenomenon is not just expensive, but it also results in distrust between these powers. Strikingly, this problem appears to be timeless. Thucydides would observe how war became inevitable due to the growth of Athenian power and the fear which this installed in Sparta. Even if states do not have much to gain from conflict, they have much to lose if they are wrong about another state's intentions, making war likely regardless of wants and desires. History is littered with costly reminders, whether it's the Soviets and Nazi Germany, or Libya and the West's attacks on Gaddafi. Harvard professor Graham Allison attempts to explain the current occurrence of war between a rising power and an established hegemon. He proposes that as one power rises, it expects greater levels of respect and influence. All the while, the established power may not only become fearful of this emerging challenger, but may become angered at the apparent disrespect to the power who has allowed this challenger to emerge in the first place. Out of 16 power transitions, only 4 would manage to avoid conflict. And when war was avoided, these nations pursued active effort to avoid confrontation on the part of the challenger and the challenged. China is especially suspicious of other world powers. The centre of humiliation is ingrained in the national consciousness. There stands resentment toward the West and the Japanese, who would take advantage of China when it was weak. They have not forgotten this, allowing for a surprising willingness to challenge powers deemed to be more powerful. In fact, China has already faced off against America. Between 1950 and 1953, China would deploy 2.2 million troops and all of its tank divisions in the Korean Peninsula, directly facing off with the Americans. Also in 1969, Chinese forces would attack a Soviet outpost on March 2nd, killing dozens of Soviet troops. The century of humiliation is a lesson learned. When states can, they will take advantage of other states, whether in reference to power vacuums or power imbalances. Even forgetting the immense structural tension of power transitions, as China becomes more powerful, Xi is likely to face increasing domestic pressure at home, making war likely on a series of fronts. China's main concerns appear to be pacifying resistance in Xinjiang, as well as regaining control over Taiwan, while asserting its many claims in the East and South China Seas. Xi Jinping hopes to return China to the predominant position prior to Western intrusion, recovering its former sphere of influence over Tibet, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. These actions are likely to result in increasing tensions between Beijing and Washington. Not only has Xi Jinping cemented his rule while consolidating power, removing presidential term limits, he has also tightened his grip over the PLA, potentially mitigating some checks on China's use of military power. Although it is ultimately unlikely to see PLA landing on American soil, there are many potential crises local to China which could see these nations falling into war. We will consider 2 of them. The first example considers Taiwan. Beijing is already making moves toward Hong Kong. Taiwan may be next. Xi Jinping will likely face significant pressure to reunify with Taiwan in the near future, but Taiwan appears to show very little support for such an outcome. Support for unification for the people of Taiwan stands in the single digits, with younger Taiwanese being less enthused than the older generations. If Xi begins to lose some domestic support, say through a faltering economy or a domestic blunder, then the reunification of Taiwan may offer significant appeal. Currently, the Taiwan Relation Act requires the United States to retain the capacity, though not the obligation, to intervene on behalf of Taiwan. Further, Washington would lose significant support if it sits idle as China invades Taiwan. This could easily become a flashpoint for the outbreak of war. Second, and arguably less likely, is the South China Sea. This region sees 1/3 of the world shipping pass through it, totaling $3 trillion of trade, explaining China's immense interest in the region. To make matters worse, there rest the untapped riches of 11 billion barrels of oil and 190 trillion cubic feet of natural gas reserves waiting to be seized. With increasing energy needs on the horizon, Beijing will need to establish dominance in this region. Washington is already showing an interest in retaining a presence in the region, with tense encounters between Washington and Beijing being common. In practice, China has already claimed the vast majority of the South China Sea, willingly putting itself at odds with the maritime claims of Vietnam, the Philippines, Brunei, and Malaysia. The fact that 10% of Vietnam's GDP comes from offshore drilling in the South China Sea spells difficult relations in the years to come. Vietnam has increasingly displayed its hopes to secure an alliance with the United States by pursuing extended investment into its defence, hoping to become an attractive ally. If such an alliance takes place, relations with Beijing and Washington could begin to deteriorate significantly. However, this video is not as pessimistic as theorists such as John Mearsheimer, who predicted that war between China and America is all but a certainty. Rather, in agreement with Graham Allison, war is avoidable. Just because war would likely take place in the oceans does not rule out tragic escalation. If a significant naval exchange leads to the loss of a naval carrier, either side would witness immense domestic pressure while facing humiliation in the front of other world powers, if they fail to retaliate to such displays of strength. Sadly, neither nation appears likely to be willing to step down from such a crisis. However, if they do hope to avoid this costly outcome of war, Allison proposes 3 options. First, America can accommodate China's rise. This involves China gaining extended influence in regional issues as well as in international institutions, though sacrificing the interests of the people of Hong Kong, Taiwan and others in the region, it could nevertheless prevent costly war. Second, America could undermine China internally. This refers to attempting to provoke regime change and cause internal fragmentation and division, though in practice this seems rather unlikely to be successful. And finally, America can try and redefine its relationship with China. Obama seemed to outright reject this outcome, while Donald Trump appears to be largely unsympathetic. However, Washington and Beijing share a series of points of interest, such as terrorism, concerns over nuclear weapons, global warming, as well as pathogens. If they work together on such issues, their relations could warm, preventing unnecessary and highly costly conflict. Now, to many Americans, these options may appear largely unappealing, and even for some, they may come as a shock. The fact is that China is rapidly rising. Unless we see a tragic internal breakdown, it seems almost guaranteed that we will witness a great power transition in the coming years. America must do better to prevent a high-cost war. Rather than paving the way for peaceful relations, America has displayed a willingness to provoke and antagonize the emerging superpower. Furthermore, this region is highly complex. America's contemporary understanding of the East Asia region is limited. As mentioned earlier, astonishingly, 54% of the top 40 international relations departments do not even offer a single graduate seminar on Asia. Washington must change this. There is an unknown path ahead, and America seems largely unprepared for what is to come. Due to its crushing past, China will be inclined to display signs of strength when provoked. Washington would do well to avoid such situations. However, whether these nations are able to successfully manage their relations is yet to be seen.